in Shivani is with NEPA. She's worked with a lot of schools, especially in the government sector, in schools with Kerala, in Delhi schools. Let me get her view on what does she feel is the scope of in school tutoring or tutoring as a whole, as a concept to address learning loss in students, and how can school leadership, Shivani, since you have worked in school leadership a lot, how should school leadership address this challenge? I think that's an important question for you.
First and foremost, I'd just like to thank everybody for their absolutely overwhelming responses. It's a pleasure listening to all your experiences. I think everything has been said. I'd just like to quote two panelists, Mrs. Manju Gupta and Colonel Jaiswal. They raised very crucial points when they stated that training for school leadership for tutoring is very quintessential because it's ultimately the representative that we talk about of heading a school, right? We are in a system of a decentralized system of education where we have a top-down approach of power dispersal. We come from a kind of anywhere where we talk about, we have a typical hierarchy. So when we talk about even transmission laws, we have to understand it is not, it doesn't happen at the middle level or at secondary or senior secondary level, but it starts at the ECCE level. How? You have learning objectives stated for per class, per level. And by the time you don't assess them the way you should be assessing as you do in senior secondary level, it gets reflected at that level. But it starts at the very basic level, it gets reflected at that level, and that in technical terms, we call it cumulative deficit. Now, tutoring comes to address this cumulative deficit, whether we talk about government schools or we talk about private schools. In government schools, since we have mostly people coming from low socioeconomic backgrounds, they prefer those tuition centers which are mushrooming in the vicinity area. It becomes a necessary evil for them. They have to rely, but they receive wrong or they incept wrong concepts. As a result, the teachers have to train them to first unlearn the concept and then relearn the concept. This results in a major teacher burnout. This is something which hasn't been discussed so far. So I'm just bringing up this point because like you said that, resignation letters will be ready because even in private schools now you have EWS quota as a very prominent system, right? So what do schools do in order to accommodate those students? Because we have, class disparities in the class and it's non-negligible. You have to address this. So the role of school leader becomes indispensable in terms of catering these nuances to tutoring. Secondly, we are taking this discussion today for accelerated learning. Let me just bring a little bit of your attention towards the idea of accelerated learning. It is considered as a very systematic and practical form of learning, which is equated more on the pragmatic terms. So we have intensive courses. Usually this is used for those classes where we have second language learning classes, where in very short span of time you are, inducted towards learning of the new language. My background is language, so that's why I'm giving this example. At a very basic level, what do teachers do? They either teach the grammar translation method if we teach English, because we are native speakers, we have our own mother tongue. It's a diverse clientele that we address to, whether it's government or it's private schools, it doesn't matter. But when we talk about making them understand the basic of language instruction, we differ. As a result, we rely more on translation rather than selecting those. So the idea of tutoring comes because we are giving them those learning gaps. If we address those learning gaps at the planning level, if 50% of the planning is done right, I don't think so that will be, accommodating that much of learning gaps in the latter stages. Number one, we will be having bare minimum time for giving those extra classes, because that is also questionable when it comes to efficiency of the teachers and school leaders. Why do we need extra class if we can't work? I mean, thesis can be written if we just, strategize and devote time. But if we are giving extra, then why is it that need? What are the parameters that are actually bringing us closer to, that's draining the teachers, that is draining the students? Why are we splitting the students between two halves of tutoring and teaching?
Excellent. So I think what you're also saying is address the fundamental issue of redesigning the curriculum, starting, redesigning the priority also, as Manju ma'am said.
Pedagogy.
The pedagogy also. The pedagogy.
Right. right?
The pedagogy as well as
tapping on the student clientele,
but
the community. Yeah.
let me bring again the same question to you also, right? So that I posed to Manju ma'am also. That it's easier said than done. Revamping of curriculum is easier said than done. Revamping of our pedagogical mindsets have been created over generations.
Yeah.
Okay. I was taught how to teach today by my teachers who were taught how. तो पता नहीं कौन से टीचर की अभी भी मेरे अंदर वो टीचिंग जीन्स चल रही हैं कि मैं उसी का सिस्टम फॉलो कर रहा हूँ. So it's a very strong mindset. It's a one to many mindset. It is not an individual mindset. And to change that mindset will take a lot of time. So in the interim position, so let me put this question. In the interim position where we are today, where we are seeing that 11th class child, so think about it in this sense, an 11th class child does not know 9th class maths, right? Even when 11th class children scored wonderfully in 10th class maths, they could not survive 11th class maths. I'm one of those people. I scored 93% in 10th class and I failed my 11th class math half yearly.
Okay.
This is a real
shall I just bring one
How do we deal with that?
Okay. So let me just bring this thing to you. Let's face it that today, if a student fails in 11th, it is not just because it's a culture shock in the curriculum development of mathematical course in 11th, that suddenly a student is thrown into 10 other parameters or extensions of mathematics. It doesn't happen like that. Usually, it is an accepted thing that 11th onwards itself, students start focusing on entrances.
नहीं, मैं कुछ और कह रहा हूँ, शिवानी. नहीं, I think
because
hold on. So there is because of 2 years. So let's not get into that he's focusing on entrance. What I'm saying
because
is
I am dealing with the end result, sir.
No.
Whether we are talking about tutoring
No, Shivani, my question is something else. My question is कि 2 साल ineffective lockdown जो lockdown हो गए थे, तो लॉकडाउन की वजह से बच्चा उतनी इफेक्टिवली पढ़ नहीं पाया. तो वो जब लॉकडाउन हुआ तो बच्चा 9th में था, ठीक है. अब जब लॉकडाउन खत्म हुआ, जब वो वापस आया स्कूल में, तो वो 11th में है. ठीक है. अब 9th क्लास की मैथमेटिक्स तो उसको मौका ही नहीं मिला सीखने. ठीक है. अब वो जब 11th में आया है, तो 11th का टीचर, मैथ टीचर, and if there are some math teachers here, they can put it in the chat box, the kind of problems they are facing in mathematics, that उसको उसको 9th के फंडास ही नहीं पता, तो वो 11th में कैलकुलस कैसे करेगा बेचारा. ठीक है. अब उस लॉस को दूर करने के लिए should we sit down and redesign the curriculum, or should we address this problem right now?
You have to just do one thing. You have to split the school hours, if I may be allowed to say that. So we have this thing that, students and teachers, they reach a level wherein they don't feel reinforced to carry on anything, whether it is education, it is study, it is curriculum, or it is even teaching for that matter. The idea is, instead of building on certain concepts, which gets reflected at a later stage, say in 12th, or, because of the board concepts, the idea is to make them revisit the elementary grade first. Because it is not just about 9th, it is about revisiting the entire elementary grade concept. Once because it's a continuum, if you realize this, right? And we gradually build up on this. Definitely till 6th, we have BODMAS and algebra gets introduced in most of the schools around that time. But it is necessary today, whether it is mathematics or it is English or social sciences, we need to reassess the entry point. So if a child is in 9th, say if he's coming today in 9th, we have to bring him towards the primary end levels. So a little bit, so that you have to take a step back so that you could take a plunge ahead.
Sure. So you're saying look at the basics and then start. Let me get Aditi. We only have 5 minutes.